These are this afternoon's top stories. Nevis's premier addresses closure of electoral office, talks at Monday's OECS Trade Ministers meeting promising, and the US and UK believe there have been irregularities in Nigeria's general elections. Good afternoon and welcome to ZIZ Midday Newscast for today, Tuesday, March 31st, 2015. I am JD Keynes. Now for a look at the news in detail. A town councillor for Randolph in Massachusetts has commended the reasonable approach taken by the newly elected Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dr. Timothy Harris, to the ongoing disputes between the United States and Venezuela. Councilman Kenrick Clifton praised Prime Minister Harris for his mature and statesmanlike approach after Dr. Harris called for reconciliation and diplomacy in the matter. U.S. President Barack Obama recently signed an executive order declaring Venezuela a threat to the U.S. national security. He also imposed sanctions on individual Venezuelan officials. While acknowledging Venezuela's friendship, Prime Minister Harris was astute in calling for dialogue, peaceful coexistence, and a more balanced approach to conflict resolution. Nevis's Premier and Minister responsible for Nevis affairs in the Federal Parliament, the Honorable Vance Amory, recently addressed the closure of the Nevis Electoral Office. Amory, during an interview with his administration's information arm, explained why the office was closed.
In respect of the Nevis Electoral Office, let me say that it was closed, and the reason for its closure was so that we did not have anyone going into that office to contaminate what was there.
Amory revealed that the Nevis Electoral Office will be reopened on April 7th. He said, however, that the new staff members will be employed.
At that time, we shall have a new management person who will run that office. We shall seek to hire people who are people of integrity and people who will perform their duties efficiently and professionally, and that anyone who goes into that office hitherto or from thence on, that they can know that provided their credentials are in order, that they will be registered to vote and that there will be no undue pressure placed on them, and that we will not be having the level of complaints that we've had over the past.
The country's sports minister, the Honorable Sean Richards, has expressed words of condolence to persons who mourn the loss of Dondre Barnaby, the Canadian athlete who drowned on St. Kitts late last week. In a statement, Minister Richards described the deceased as a bright star from the Athletics Canada national track and field team. Minister Richards said he personally shared his sorrow with Dondre's teammates, but added that it was important to extend sentiments to his family, friends, and loved ones. Richards said that he, along with Ministry of Sports, pledged support to the Athletics Canada coaching staff and athletes in the time of grief. We turn our attention now to news from across the region. OECS trade ministers met in St. Lucia on Monday, hoping to find consensus on a strategic approach to address trade challenges which confront member states in the sub-region. The inaugural meeting of OECS trade ministers also sought to monitor progress on the free circulation of goods.
No clear end in sight. Such is the case as it relates to regional trade talks with some members of the international community. OECS trade ministers met in St. Lucia on Monday, determined to steer those negotiations back on track. It was one of their goals at the inaugural meeting of the Council of Ministers. Dominica's Trade Minister Ian Douglas says it is time to finalize some of these outstanding trade pacts.
You have a trade agreement with Canada. And those trade agreements have been going back and forth for the longest while on particular issues that we have to hammer out. So what this meeting wants to do is almost like reach consensus and conclusion as to where we are in as far as our trade relations with Canada are concerned. There are all other multilateral agreements that have been lagging, and so we want to discuss, and the technocrats will bring us up to date and up to speed with where exactly we are with the status of those negotiations.
Nicole Garraway is a senior trade officer at the OECS Commission's Trade Policy Unit. She says issues concerning the free movement of services and goods are also high on the agenda. She says the officials will discuss the progress made towards a regime for the free circulation of goods.
What that intends to do is to remove barriers as it relates to trade in goods within the economic union. Therefore, we want goods, once they've passed the external frontier, that is the first border, for them to be able to travel basically within the economic union without limitation. So in terms of no tariffs.
The agenda at the one-day meeting also included preparation for the 10th World Trade Organization Ministerial Conference, scheduled for Kenya in December. Alison Kentish, HDS News Force.
In Guyana, the Trades Union Congress has added its voice to the 2015 elections race. Ivor Wharton has the details.
The political campaign is heating up and the Ghana Trades Union Congress is adding to that fire. Today, General Secretary of that union, Lincoln Lewis, said that President Donald Ramatar should see Guyana as a nation and not as his plantation to do as he pleases. The president has said that his 3 years in office has been trying. The union feels that this is of his own making.
He has to account, this is a nation of laws, and he has to account for his stewardship consistent with the laws. And that's what he was not prepared to do and he's not prepared to do. And any man who is not prepared to conform to law disqualifies himself to lead this country.
The outspoken trade unionist did not spare the former President Barra Jagdeo criticism. He believes that Jagdeo must take full responsibility for having Guyana ranked the most corrupt country in the region.
Because Roger Khan, it is under his presidency we have seen a state-sponsored death squad. Roger Khan has accepted that he has been part of the process of executing people by being asked by this government, by his government to do so. So he is, at best, incriminating himself more on this issue.
The GTUC said no society can develop when its most vital resource, its human capital, is denied, deprived and disrespected. Reporting for Capital News, Ivor Wharton.
Internationally, Britain and the United States have voiced concerns about irregularities in the counting of votes after Nigeria's elections. In a joint statement, they said they have seen disturbing signs that there has been political interference with the process. The Election Commission said there would have been a strong indication of who will win the presidential election by the end of Monday, and that the final result should be announced today. Andrew Harding reports.
It's an uneasy wait here. Empty streets in the northern city of Kano. Tight security outside the local election commission, as a nation waits to see if Nigeria's political elites will play by the rules.
If you look at the markets, at least 80% of people in this market are not here because they sit down at home waiting for the results in case of any trouble. So people are anxious.
We're hoping against hope that by the grace of God, everything will be fine. People will accept defeat graciously and move on.
Nigeria's main opposition, the APC, has put up fresh decorations at its headquarters, anticipating victory. But as the Electoral Commission prepares to start unveiling the results, a dramatic intervention by Britain and America. This joint statement released warning of disturbing indications that the collation process, where the votes are finally counted, may be subject to deliberate political interference.
There is a fog of war at the moment. There's a great cloud of rumour and concern in the country. It's a risk of distortion of the expressed views of the Nigerian people. That seemed to us sufficiently grave to require a response, and an early one.
So this is a warning, if you like, a shot across the bows?
It's an indication that the international community is watching the election very closely.
No one's saying it in public yet, but the concern here is that President Goodluck Jonathan may be heading towards an election defeat and is looking for ways to change that. The longer it takes for the final election results to be announced, the more tensions are likely to rise here.
The voting process on Saturday has been widely praised, quite an achievement in Africa's largest democracy. Those monitoring the election insist that any rigging that follows now will be easy to spot.
If somebody tries to steal this election, you'll know.
We will know. That is the whole essence of the quick count methodology that we have so meticulously floated for this election.
So you've been counting at the local level, and if, when the final results come out, they're different, you'll smell a rat.
Of course, that is why we insist on collecting our results at the polling unit level, because at that point, it's in full view of all the voters and they accept it before moving home.
Nigerian voters have already risen to the challenge. Now the pressure is on the politicians to do the same. Andrew Harding, BBC News, Abuja.
The Boston bombing jury heard of gruesome deaths as the prosecution team called its final witnesses in the case where Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is charged with killing 3 and injuring 264 others. Gavino Garay reports.
The Boston bombing jury heard final testimony from medical examiners on Monday about one of the blasts that ripped through runners and onlookers at the finish line of the 2013 Boston Marathon. The accused, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, is charged with the bombing that killed 3 and injured more than 260 others. Massachusetts Chief Medical Examiner Henry Nields showed the jury 8-year-old Martin Richards' bloodstained New England Patriots t-shirt worn on the day he died. He said a piece of shrapnel appeared to have gone straight through Richards' body. Holes on the t-shirt, he said, correlated with injuries to the child's torso. Nields was the last witness called by the prosecution. The shrapnel from a homemade pressure cooker bomb also ripped through Chinese exchange student Lindsay Liu's legs. A Boston medical examiner said the 23-year-old bled to death in minutes. The jury also saw surveillance photos and video of Tsarnaev standing in the crowd in front of the Forum restaurant where prosecutors say Tsarnaev left the bomb that killed Richard and Liu. The surveillance evidence showed a backpack at his feet and Tsarnaev making a 19-second phone call about a minute before the blast. Now that the prosecution has rested, defense attorneys will begin calling witnesses. It is not clear if Tsarnaev will testify in his own defense. Tsarnaev faces death or life in prison if convicted.
And now the weather. Conditions across St. Kitts and Nevis will be partly cloudy today with little or no shower activity. Tonight will be fair. Temperatures will reach a high of 28 degrees Celsius with a low of 22 degrees this evening. Winds will blow from the east at 7 to 14 miles per hour. Seas will be slight to moderate with waves of 1.2 to 1.5 meters or 4 to 5 feet. The sun will set at 6:24 p.m. today. It will rise at 6:07 tomorrow. The weather brings us to the end of ZIZ's midday newscast. Join us this evening for the details to these stories and more when we present our major newscast. I have been your presenter, JD Keynes. Have a great afternoon.